She didn't mean for everyone to hear her laugh, but it rang out anyway, sharp, surprised, a little cruel, cutting through the soft piano music and low dinner, chatter of the restaurant like a glass shattering on tile. Across the small candlelit table, Daniel Carter felt the sound land on his chest. It wasn't the kind of laugh that said something was funny. It was the kind that said, "You've got to be kidding me." Emily Hopper pressed her napkin to her lips, trying to recover. "I'm sorry," she said, still smiling in disbelief. You have a daughter? You didn't put that in your profile." Daniel's fingers tightened around his water glass. He was used to this moment, the shift, the calculation behind someone's eyes. "Yes," he said calmly. "Her name's Lily. She's 6. Emily leaned back in her chair as if that one sentence had physically pushed her away. She was 28, polished and ambitious, a marketing executive with a calendar booked 3 weeks out. Her blonde hair fell perfectly over one shoulder. She'd walked into the restaurant earlier with the confidence of someone certain. She was meeting her future. But not like this. She shook her head, a disbelieving smile still playing on her lips. "I'm not looking to be someone's stepmom." Daniel nodded once. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. "I understand." He reached for his wallet. "You don't have to," Emily began, but he was already placing cash under the edge of the plate. "It's okay," he said. "Thank you for coming." She stood before he could say anything else, smoothing her dress. "I wish you the best," she added, the way people do when they mean the opposite. And then she walked out, still half laughing as she reached the door. Daniel stayed seated for a moment, staring at the candle flame flickering between them. He let himself feel it, the sting, the humiliation, the familiar ache of being dismissed before anyone bothered to know him. Then he stood, straightened his jacket, and headed toward the exit. Outside, the cool evening air of early fall wrapped around him. The restaurant sat on a busy downtown street, headlights sliding past like restless thoughts. He pulled out his phone to check the time. 8:14 p.m. Lily would be finishing her math homework about now. He smiled softly. That was what mattered. As he stepped off the curb toward the parking lot, he didn't notice the older man standing near the entrance. Tall, broad-shouldered, silver hair cut close to his scalp. The man had watched Emily storm out, confusion written across his face. "Emily!" the man called after her. She froze. Daniel paused too. Emily turned, startled. "Dad? What are you doing here?" The older man stepped forward, his eyes moving from his daughter to Daniel. He took in the scene quickly, the tension, the unfinished dinner inside, the look on Daniel's face that he recognized instantly. He'd worn that look once himself. "I was having dinner with an old friend," he said slowly. "I saw you walk out." Emily flushed. "It was nothing, just not what I expected." Her father's gaze shifted fully to Daniel now. "Sir," he said, voice steady, "were you her date?" Daniel hesitated. He wasn't sure how to answer without making things worse. "Yes, sir." The older man stepped closer. Up close, Daniel could see the faint lines etched into his weathered face, the quiet strength in his posture. "Did she treat you with respect?" Emily's eyes widened. "Dad!" "It's fine," Daniel said quickly. "We just realized we want different things." "That wasn't my question," the man replied. There was something in his tone. Not anger, but accountability. Daniel considered lying. It would be easier. Instead, he shrugged lightly. She was honest. The man held his gaze for a long moment. Something passed between them, something unspoken. "You have a child?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "A daughter. How old?" 6. The older man inhaled slowly. Then, without warning, he straightened his spine even further and saluted him. Right there on the sidewalk. Crisp, formal, respectful. Traffic noise seemed to fade. Emily stared, mortified. "Dad, what are you doing?" Her father didn't lower his hand until a full second had passed. "I'm honoring a man who shows up," he said quietly. Daniel blinked, stunned. "Sir, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." The older man turned to his daughter. "Do you know what real responsibility looks like?" he asked her. "It looks like a man who raises his child. It looks like someone who doesn't hide it to make himself more marketable." Emily's cheeks burned. "I just don't want kids right now." "And that's your right," her father replied evenly. But you don't laugh at someone for loving theirs. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. Not pride, exactly. More like relief. Like someone had seen him clearly for the first time in a long while. The older man extended his hand. Frank Harper. Daniel shook it. Daniel Carter. Are you raising her alone? Frank asked. Yes, sir. Her mom passed away 3 years ago. Emily's expression changed at that. I'm sorry, she murmured, the laughter gone now. Daniel nodded. Thank you. Frank's grip tightened slightly before he released it. I served 22 years in the Marine Corps, Frank said. I've stood beside men who carried more weight than anyone saw. Being a single father, that's no less a mission. Daniel swallowed. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected to feel understood. Dad, Emily said softly, guilt creeping into her voice. I didn't mean to be cruel. Frank looked at her not unkindly. I know you didn't, but intention doesn't erase impact. A car horn blared down the street. The world resumed its normal rhythm. Daniel cleared his throat. It's okay, really. We just weren't a match. He meant it. There was no anger left in him. Only perspective. Frank studied him one more time. Your daughter's lucky, he said. Daniel smiled, this time fully. I'm the lucky one. They parted ways after that. Emily lingered for a second as if wanting to say more, but Daniel gave her a small nod that closed the chapter gently. He got into his aging sedan and drove home. The house he rented was modest, peeling paint on the porch railing, a swing set in the yard slightly crooked from too many enthusiastic pushes. But when he opened the front door, warmth spilled out to meet him. Daddy! Lily ran down the hallway in mismatched pajamas, her curly brown hair bouncing. She crashed into his legs, wrapping her arms around him. How was your dinner? She asked, looking up with wide eyes. Daniel scooped her into his arms. It was short, he said honestly. She giggled. Did you eat dessert? Nope. Her face turned serious. That's sad. He laughed, at a real one this time. You know what? I think we can fix that. They made chocolate chip pancakes at 9 o'clock at night. Because sometimes life required sweetness at unconventional hours. Flour dusted the counter. Lily insisted on flipping one herself and nearly dropped it on the stove. Later, as he tucked her into bed, she touched his cheek. You're my favorite person, she whispered. His throat tightened. You're mine, too. After she fell asleep, Daniel sat on the edge of her bed for a long moment, watching her breathe. He thought about the salute, about the weight of it, about how easy it would have been to shrink tonight, to feel small, unwanted less than. Instead, he felt steady. The next morning, as the sun climbed over the neighborhood rooftops, there was a knock at his door. Daniel frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened it, Frank Harper stood on the porch, hands in his jacket pockets. Good morning, Frank said. Daniel blinked. Sir? I hope this isn't inappropriate, Frank continued. I asked Emily for your address. I wanted to say something properly. Daniel stepped aside. Of course. They stood in the small living room. Lily's drawings covered the fridge in the adjacent kitchen. Frank looked around, taking it all in. I owe you an apology, he said. Not for her preferences, but for how she handled it. That's on me, too. You don't owe me anything, Daniel replied gently. Frank nodded. Maybe not, but I believe in owning what's mine. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. Daniel stiffened slightly. I can't accept money. Frank almost smiled. It's not money. Inside was a card, a simple one. On the front, in firm handwriting, to a good man. Daniel opened it. Raising a child alone takes courage most people never see. Thank you for showing up anyway, Frank. Daniel stared at the words longer than he expected. I don't need praise, he said quietly. Frank's voice softened. It's not praise. It's recognition. From the hallway, Lily peeked around the corner. Who's that? She whispered loudly. Daniel beckoned her over. This is Mr. Frank. Frank crouched slightly to her level. You must be Lily. She nodded. Your dad's doing a fine job, Frank told her solemnly. I know, she said matter-of-factly. Frank laughed on a deep, genuine sound. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. You ever need anything, he said, you call. Daniel met his eyes. Thank you. After he left, Daniel closed the door slowly. Lily tugged on his sleeve. Why did he say thank you to you? Daniel looked down at her, at the little girl who had redefined his entire world. Because sometimes, he said carefully, people recognize something important when they see it. What's important? He knelt so they were eye to eye. Taking care of the people you love? Even when it's hard, she considered that. Like when you help me with homework even when you're tired. Exactly like that. She smiled, satisfied, and ran off to find her backpack. Daniel stood there for a moment longer. The night before, he had been the man someone laughed at. This morning, he was the man someone saluted. But nothing about him had changed. He was still just a father doing his best. And maybe that was the point. Kindness doesn't always roar. Sometimes it stands quietly on a sidewalk,